Welcome to this bi-weekly update from Feeding San Diego on the status of our COVID-19 relief efforts. We find ourselves fully 2 months into the COVID-19 crisis and working diligently to address what is a continually rising need for hunger relief services across San Diego County. By way of reminder, Feeding San Diego was founded in 2007 and really created concurrent with the 2007 wildfires, which swept through San Diego County and displaced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families, and really a baptism by fire for this organization, who in only 3 days distributed 520,000 pounds of food and water to first responders and dislocated families. Here we are 13 years later, and Feeding San Diego has been ranked by the San Diego Business Journal as the 13th largest charity in San Diego County and the largest dedicated to hunger relief. We are distributing over 26 million meals per year. That is going to increase significantly because of the COVID-19 response activities. Our mission is to connect every person facing hunger with nutritious meals by maximizing food rescue. And why food rescue? Because 40% of the food in our community gets thrown away every day, which in a typical month is more than enough than we need to solve hunger for every man, woman, and child who finds themselves short of food. So Feeding San Diego's founders had a very entrepreneurial, a very innovative approach to this problem that was not dependent on government resources, but really focused on a free and abundant resource that was already here in our community every day, and set up a county-wide food rescue and distribution system, which has been scaling every year in the organization's existence to serve ever more families. Our vision, simply put, is a hunger-free and healthy San Diego. And I note the inclusion of the word healthy because to our board of directors, that is an exceptionally important part of our mission. We do not want to just provide enough calories to address hunger in that way, but we want to provide healthy, fresh, nutritious food that meets people's dietary needs, that prepares young people for learning, that prepares adults for tackling life's challenges, that keeps our seniors healthy in the prime of their life. Everything that we do is guided by a nutritional mission, not just a pure calorie count. So this is an important part of who we are and what we do. As a reminder, we have on the website a special coronavirus response page, which I suspect that many of you have already visited. It is linked at the top of every other page on our website. It's the first thing that links from the pop-up window when you go to feedingsandiego.org. And there are a number of critical community resources that are offered through our coronavirus page. Most especially the first button on the left, Find Food. And I mentioned this to this audience before, but we actually had to pay a surcharge to our internet service provider because the Find Food map has been getting exceptionally high utilization rates. And that is a penalty that we are delighted to pay because that is a service to the community that is proving to be invaluable as people find themselves food insecure for the first time in their lives. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But this is also a good place to make a financial donation to Feeding San Diego. It's a really excellent place to get more information about how to donate food or how to hold your own fundraiser for Feeding San Diego, how to launch a benefit campaign, and especially how to spread the word. And I can't underscore enough how important it is for ordinary people to be sharing information with their neighbors, with their faith communities, with their coworkers, with their family members, because so many people across the entirety of San Diego County are struggling with hunger, but because they have never been in this position before, they do not understand basic information like where to go to get food, what is required. They don't know that we're not asking people to fill out forms. They don't know that they don't have to provide personal information. They may not even know that the food is being distributed through drive-through lanes in a very COVID-safe way, that they and their family can stay in a car with the windows up and the food can be placed in the trunk or through the tailgate to maximize safety for them, as well as, frankly, for the volunteers and staff that are distributing the food. But the point is that people who are not used to needing this form of assistance have a lot of questions and they may not know where to immediately go to get answers. And that is the type of information that is available on this webpage. And we are being very vigilant about keeping this webpage updated with the best information that we have. So the first item on today's agenda is to talk about the increasing demand for services that we're seeing all across San Diego County. And on the next slide, you're going to see a photo that you may have already seen at this point from our public service announcements that are airing on television. But we are seeing a shocking rise in hunger using some analytics that were provided by our national partners at Feeding America. We estimate that there has been a 50% increase in need. Now, anecdotally, that matches the level of increase that we've seen on average at our food distribution locations across the county. And we distribute food at almost 300 places, and almost none of them have seen less than a 40% increase. The average is about 50%. And honestly, some sites have seen anywhere from a 100 to 400% increase in need. So this is really a staggering increase, due, frankly, in no small part to the fact that the unemployment rate in San Diego County continues to rise. And each time we do this biweekly webinar, it goes up. So it was at 25%, and then it was at 27%. Well, now it's almost 30% unemployment. That is more than the 2008 recession. That is even more than the Great Depression. So we are seeing a historically unprecedented level of unemployment in San Diego County right now. That's about 490,000 people, according to the latest estimates from the San Diego Association of Governments. And you know, with 430,000 people have lost their employment just since March 7th. And that is a really staggering number of people who just 2 months ago were leading middle-class lives and had paychecks and had income and were able to balance their monthly budgets. And now they find themselves flat broke. Perhaps they're in debt, struggling to pay for the basics of their household expenses. And hunger is the most visceral human need. We cannot expect people to reasonably address the other challenges that are confronting them, such as employment, health, education, stable living circumstances, until those people are fed. Nutrition is the most fundamentally important aspect of every person's day, and nothing happens until you solve nutrition. It's been said that a fed person can have many problems, but a hungry person only has one problem. And we really believe that. We believe that we as a community cannot expect children and workers and families to deal with and address the complex challenges posed by COVID-19 if they're dealing with hunger. We have to solve hunger first. So we're delighted to be in a position to do that. The reality is that in addition to rising unemployment, grocery store prices have been rising steadily, and making it even more expensive for those who have some income to afford to buy the food that they need for themselves and their families. And prospects for economic recovery are not good. We are going to see in this county a lagging recovery. We are very exposed to the travel and tourism sector. That's a really big and important and vital part of our economy. Unfortunately, that's going to be one of the slower sectors of the economy to recover because it relies on economic recovery in other places, creating disposable income and a sense of travel safety that encourages people then to come take vacations in San Diego. Also, many businesses will maybe not hold as many seminars or as many conventions or as many in-person conversations as they might have previously. So across San Diego, there is a great disruption of the economy caused by general unemployment, general economic struggles with business closures, but we should not delude ourselves into thinking that within weeks of some miracle happening with respect to COVID-19, whether it be a vaccine or a cure or just a flattening of the curve to a degree that society begins to reopen, we cannot allow ourselves to believe that within that same time frame, the economic recovery is going to occur that puts people back to work, that generates the incomes they need. There is going to be a significant gap between the time that the COVID-19 crisis continues to be such an incredible, dangerous, and deadly challenge to our healthcare and the time that we reach some sort of full economic recovery, returning our employment base to pre-COVID-19 levels. So the strategy here at Feeding San Diego is to plan for how we're going to address that gap, how we're going to make sure that as the public's attention diverts to getting life back to normal, and I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know if that's months away or a year away. I have no way of knowing, but we are planning for addressing a interval of hunger relief that's going to be very significant, very large, that's going to be continuing for months and months and months beyond the time that COVID-19 is perceived as being an immediate health crisis. So to do this work, you've heard me speak in previous webinars about how fundamentally important our partners are throughout the community. We rely very heavily on our faith-based and charitable organizations across San Diego County to distribute food to the community, in some cases to turn that food into meals that can be served to the homeless individuals or to seniors who are homebound. We rely on those partners to do food rescue, to go to 530 locations across San Diego County where we rescue food, and to bring that food back to their charitable organization and distribute it in a food-safe way. So today we would like to introduce you and hear a few words from the CEO of one of our partner charitable organizations, Rosie Vasquez. Rosie Vasquez is an amazing dynamic leader, and we have worked with her in previous capacities. And some time ago, she came to see us and she said, I am going to start a new one-stop homeless service agency in Chula Vista called Community Through Hope. And that organization was such a broad vision of having clothing, healthcare, food, a thrift store, the police department's homeless outreach team, having all these resources co-located in a single place. And those who don't know Rosie might have been pessimistic about the ability to get this done or the timeline by which it would get done. But literally within months, she was in the process of putting this together and found the appropriate location, got the appropriate funding, created the center. It has been a spectacular asset to hunger relief efforts in Chula Vista and the surrounding community, but it has done so much more. And during this COVID-19 crisis, as we were looking to create a series of regional food distributions around San Diego County, it was only logical that we'd reach out to Rosie and see if she would be willing to host one of these distributions. Well, she not only hosts a weekly distribution, she hosts a twice a week distribution, and she's distributing food every day of the week in various ways to the community and to people in need. And she is a one-person tour de force, and we are just so inspired by her. We're inspired by her work. We're inspired by the legion of volunteers that she assembles at her center in Chula Vista on a daily basis. And it gives me really great pride to introduce you to one of our most valued partners in the community, Rosie Vasquez, Executive Director of Community Through Hope. So Rosie, welcome.
Thank you so much, Vince. And I'd like to thank our Feeding San Diego family for just this amazing opportunity to share what's going on at Community Through Hope during this COVID-19 crisis. I do want to share that Community Through Hope is a volunteer-driven and partnership-based organization. We have two main missions here at CTH, and that is to address food insecurity and the unsheltered crisis in the South Bay. I did want to share a little bit before COVID. CTH was focused on these two main missions. Project Nutrition was serving the community in a few ways. Number one, we consider ourselves nutrition advocates. So it was important for us to be able to secure the proper nutrition to serve properly. We would distribute through a free farmers market style distribution that was really filled with a lot of dignity and compassion, as well as trying to use our space as a local hub where smaller food pantries or nutrition programs could come and access nutrition from us. We had about 24 hours to change our model. And one of the first things we did was focus on research. Our development coordinator really started doing the research with the county, our local food bank partners, just to make sure how could we distribute properly with dignity, but be able to do that in the most safest environment that we could, build a new culture here through COVID-19. So one of the first things that we were able to do was to access new volunteer cadres. We lost about half of our cadre because of their age. A lot of our volunteers are retired, so we needed to make sure they were safe, but we had access to a new pool of volunteers. The other thing that we focused on was how do we collect the data that's going to come in? What's going to best serve our agency to continue to stay fluid, but also continue to grow and be able to document who we were serving and how we were going to serve them. Partnerships have been a key to CTH since the beginning, and what we found was a whole new group of partners that reached out to us, heard about what we were trying to do in the South Bay. Some of those were the faith-based organizations. We had about 3 that were very supportive fiscally. We partnered with the Sweetwater Authority. We really didn't have a lot of corporate sponsorships, but they have stepped up to the plate for us. The San Diego Humane Society received wonderful support from Price Philanthropies, and wonderful that even from New York City, the Harry Chapin Foundation reached out to us, heard about our work, and it really just lifted the agency up, letting us know we're doing things the right way and for the right reason. We did have to go ahead and change our model. So what we, since the shelter in place, what we decided to do was change our distributions to a much larger scale. We started to do weekly drive-through distributions with wonderful support from the police department. We actually closed down a portion of this very large block that allows us to use a park across the street to flow in about 150 cars at a time. We've also implemented a new senior nutrition pantry and distribution. We're serving about 1,000 seniors through partnerships and, in a sense, adopting some senior mobile parks that were on lockdown, as well as some other apartments, and then making sure that all the nutrition that's coming into CTH is affecting those seniors that are really in great need. We've also continued to keep open our emergency services for our unsheltered clients, providing them with nutrition, emergency needs, clothing, and finally, I'd just like to share, the difference between pre-COVID and where we're at now. And before, CTH would serve about 5,000 individuals per month. Now we are going above 25,000. The other issue was access of nutrition. We would flow about 70,000 pounds of nutrition per month. We are currently above 300,000 in order to be able to address the food insecurity here in the South Bay. And, finally, this amazing partnership that's been built over so many years with Feeding San Diego. As a small but mighty nonprofit, Vince, and to your entire team, thank you so much for being our champions, as well as just providing us with the information that we need to do a great job in our community.
Well, thank you so much, Rosie. We really value and appreciate the partnership, your leadership, and creating so much out of nothing, just building it from the ground up. And our viewers can see on the screen a photo of the drive-through distribution, and it has 2 lanes. It's very efficient. The volunteers bring the food out to the cars and place it in the cars. And I'm really proud that we are partnered with Community Through Hope. The lower photo, you see a large metal room. That's actually a walk-in cold storage facility, which was purchased by Feeding San Diego for Community Through Hope. And a big part of our partnership with local faith-based and charitable organizations is working to try to enhance the physical capacity for food rescue and food distribution. And Rosie, we were just really delighted to partner with you in creating that cold storage on site, and hope that has been as big a catalyst to your efforts as we had thought.
Oh, it has. It's definitely impacted our unsheltered community as well as everyone in Chula Vista that is receiving Starbucks produce through our food share program. And thank you so much for believing in us and lifting us up.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for joining us today, Rosie. It's really great to hear from you.
Thank you, Vince. My pleasure.
So next we're going to talk about food sourcing, which is a term we use to describe the broad array of methods by which we obtain the food that we are helping to distribute out into the community. One of the most basic questions that people ask us is, where do we get food? And there are four basic ways that most hunger relief organizations get food. There's local food rescue, distant food rescue, purchased food, or government commodities. And normally Feeding San Diego has only about 3% of its food from purchases and none of its food from government purchased commodities. So 97% of our food is normally rescued food that would otherwise go to waste. And we're very, very proud of that fact because, as I said earlier, this country throws away enough food to solve the problem of hunger. And so why we should allow good, nutritious, delicious, healthy food to go to waste when people, sometimes just within miles of the landfill, are going to bed hungry is beyond comprehension. So Feeding San Diego was founded by Gwendolyn M. Sondheim and allies to form an organization that would have food rescue at the center of its work. And even to this day, our board of directors is leading the organization toward ever more food rescue to solve the problem of hunger. Here in San Diego County, we have seen a decline in food rescue as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, and we have seen soaring demand as a result of higher unemployment. And we normally, as I said, would not receive any government purchased food, but those circumstances have shuffled our deck a little bit and created a new approach to our business. And I just want to walk you through quickly a description of what some of that looks like. With respect to food rescue here in San Diego County, we have 530 locations around the county at which we rescue food. Many of them, about 228 of those, are grocery stores and other retail outlets, 29 local farms or brokers, 207 Starbucks stores, many of which were closed for weeks in this COVID-19 crisis, but are now fortunately reopening. 19 kitchens operated by San Diego Unified School District, the airport, the zoo, the ballpark, the convention center. There are many, many places across this county that Feeding San Diego is rescuing food. We also, by the way, launched a Meal Connect smartphone app, which you will find in the iPhone or Android app stores. That Meal Connect app is used by food donors who can't provide scheduled donation service. Like, we can't have a charity go there every day because there are days when they won't have any food. So the Meal Connect smartphone app creates essentially a food bank in the cloud where they can post a available donation. Our technology will dispatch a trained volunteer to rescue that food, and our technology will tell the volunteer which local charity is standing by to receive that food donation. So we're excited by that because it opens up a whole other wave of food rescue across the county. We're doing great amongst scheduled rescue opportunities, though we're wanting to grow that significantly. But then we can simultaneously be capturing this intermittent or occasional food donations, which is really going to help us a lot. But the biggest challenge with retail rescue product since the COVID-19 crisis began has been that consumers have been clearing out the shelves at grocery stores, and we've seen about a 30% decline in available rescue product. The good news is that number is shrinking. That the percentage of rescued food is improving with each passing week, and the reopening of Starbucks stores has helped. The fact that I think consumers could only hoard so much food before their cabinets were full, I think that has helped too. But the retail rescue system that we operate, which is very vast and very complicated across San Diego County, is starting to return to its normal levels. Part of food rescue, as I mentioned when we were meeting with Rosie Vasquez, is the capacity of local faith-based and charitable organizations to do food rescue. And I want to thank Assemblymember Brian Mainshine from San Diego, who sponsored legislation that allowed cap and trade dollars within the state budget to be used to purchase equipment for food rescue, because this helps the state achieve its greenhouse gas emissions goals. And some exciting updates for you in this week's call are that we were able to provide a food rescue van earlier this week to Bread of Life, which is a North County food rescue charity. And just yesterday, I had the pleasure of turning over the keys to a second food rescue van to Brother Benno, which is one of our largest food rescue partner organizations in Oceanside. These vans and more to come were funded through a $500,000 grant from Cal Recycle, which is the state recycling agency. And this is the cap and trade dollars that were funded through the state budget to do food rescue as part of the comprehensive greenhouse gas reduction goals adopted by the state of California. So these vans cost about $65,000 each. They're specially modified for food rescue. They have refrigeration units on the roof, and they have special equipment. So these are going to make a big difference in the community and significantly increase the capacity of these and other charities that will be receiving vans just like them to expand food rescue. Also, you see mention of some coolers. The Santee Food Bank and North County Sober Living in Carlsbad are two examples of partners who are going to be receiving new cold storage facilities similar to what you saw in the photo from Community Through Hope. And these are also critical infrastructure to food rescue, because so much of the product is fresh foods, dairy, meats, and other proteins that have to be cold stored. So we're really glad to get this funding. We thank Assemblymember Mainshine for his leadership in creating the program that enabled us to apply for the funding. And it's already making a significant difference to improve lives here in San Diego County. So beyond the local food rescue, there's out-of-county food rescue. And honestly, most of the food that comes here to our distribution center in Sereno Mesa is food that we have rescued from outside of the county that has to flow into the county on large big rig trucks, 53-foot long trailers. The primary source of that is the California Association of Food Banks, who operate a farm-to-family program. And you can see on this graph the significant increase in the amount of produce that we are acquiring through the farm-to-family program. And typically these are crops that farmers have grown that unfortunately there's just not a buyer for the crop, or this is produce that has been sorted out at the packing shed because it has been identified as being odd shaped or odd colored. And this produce with character, we sometimes call it, is every bit as good and nutritious as the food that you're getting in the grocery store. But whether it's a surplus crop or it's packing shed sort, it's brand new product, and we're able to bring that product to families in San Diego. We often have to pay the cost of harvesting that crop, pulling it off the field. We have to pay a packaging fee, and we have to pay the extraordinary transportation costs associated with trucking that food into San Diego. But we get that food at a fraction of what it would cost to buy those produce items on the wholesale food market. And that fresh fruits and vegetables supply chain is so critically important to our goal of not just feeding San Diego, but nourishing San Diego. And I just have to say, when you go to our sites that serve the youth population and see young people just lunging in some cases for these fresh fruits and vegetables, you realize just what a heartwarming but also scientifically essential part of our mission that is. We have also been receiving food boxes that were funded through a program that Assemblymember Todd Gloria is currently working to expand. And these food boxes are very convenient for us to distribute because they come already packaged with all the basic food ingredients for a week's worth of food for a family, and typically includes canned food, boxed food, pasta, grains, rice. It's a really nice balanced food box. And we have already received 3,375 of these food boxes and distributed them in the community. So we're grateful to our partnership with the California Association of Food Banks because of our ability to access not just those food boxes, but mainly for that farm to family program that gives us access to rescued produce from 225 farms and packing sheds up and down the state of California, and even includes produce from as far away as Washington and Idaho. So it's a big win for the San Diego community. But with the decline in retail rescue, with the soaring demand across the county, we have had to turn very, very heavily to purchased food, which is not our normal business model, but these are not normal times. And in the last 8 weeks, we have purchased 161 truckloads of food at an estimated cost of $5.5 million. That a staggering amount of purchased food was accomplished through the generosity of donors from all over San Diego County and even across the country. We thank Gwendolyn M. Sondheim, our board chair and founder, and the Equalia International Foundation for the generous $1 million matching gift, which was offered to incentivize even more donations. And I'm pleased to report that that was completely funded and that we achieved 100% of that match. But what an extraordinarily generous gift to help hunger relief here in San Diego County. Last year, we averaged 2 truckloads of food per month. So now we are purchasing 80 truckloads of food per month, just to give you some perspective on what a staggering increase this is in the amount of purchased food. It's also important to note that not all 161 truckloads of food are on the highway headed to our warehouse right now. There have been such significant disruptions in the food supply system around the country because of plant closures and packing plant closures, very high demand from retailers trying to purchase more product than normal, that many of these 161 truckloads are not arriving in this distribution center until June, July, and even August. So the bad news is that there is difficulty in getting timely receipt of food orders. There's a lag sometimes of a month or 2 months or 3 months. The good news is that we have been able to raise in the outset of this crisis enough money to buy food deliveries that will ensure that we will be able to provide food through the summer months with a very stable consistency, a very high level of continuity of service to our agency partners, the local charities and faith-based organizations that we work with across the county. So in some respects, not having all that food arrive at once has been a blessing. It will help us to sustain our level of distribution. Now, some of you may have been reading in the newspaper about something called the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. This was a federal government response to news reports of farmers tilling perfectly good crops back into the soil and dairy producers pouring milk down the drain and animals being rendered. There's just all kinds of waste going on across the food system at a time when hunger is soaring across the country. So this has left many Americans just dumbfounded, and frankly, it's left us dumbfounded. But the federal government recently announced this Coronavirus Food Assistance Program and is willing to expend $3 billion toward capturing those farm products that are going to be destroyed and instead getting them to families in need. We took a very aggressive posture in trying to become recipients of the food boxes that are being generated through that program. And we had mixed success. There have been many criticisms of the way that purchasing decisions and distribution decisions were made around this program, but we have had some success. And we are anticipating about 4 truckloads of food per week will be arriving here, and that's not inconsequential. These are going to be produce boxes. We have some pictured here that arrived in our distribution center just yesterday. And I had a chance to open one of those boxes, and it was great. It had lettuce, onions, potatoes, celery, apples. It was a really nice, wholesome box of brand new produce that was beautifully packaged. And I think these produce boxes are going to play a critical need. But this is a temporary program. It has a lifespan that is measured in weeks. And we don't know if the program is going to be renewed for subsequent cycles. There's talk of that. We don't know if we're going to have as much access to this product, but I just wanted to share it with you because it's one of the kind of innovative things that we're doing to grab food wherever it can be found. I mean, there is something akin to foraging that is going on here at Feeding San Diego as we look across the landscape and find as many places as possible to get food to families in need right here in San Diego County. And this is one of the new developments that we have to report on this front, is that we are now recipients of food through this federal program. Well, that concludes the discussion of food sourcing. The other half of our work is really food distribution. And I want to give you a quick update on what's going on in the world of food distribution. The Food Finder map, which is on our website, is still, as I said, being very heavily trafficked. People are sharing it, they're posting it to social media. It has proven to be an extraordinary resource for the community. People can double click on the map and zoom right into their own community and get specific information about local food distribution opportunities. Really, the strength of what I have to tell you is that nothing has changed. I know that sounds a little strange, but the basic goal of Feeding San Diego's response has been to create a stable, sustainable, consistent map of food distribution locations, because in our opinion, it really does not serve the community well to have one-off food distributions that get 2,000 cars to a parking lot one Saturday, and then the next Saturday there's nothing. Our goal has been from the outset to avoid setting up one-time distributions and instead to create a stable series of countywide scheduled food distributions so that people who are struggling with an enormous array of problems have a predictable point where they can access food. And I'm really pleased to report that this distribution network is highly stabilized. We're seeing increased utilization, and I don't want to leave that point behind. We're seeing increased demand. We're seeing increased use of most of these sites, but I think it serves the community well that we are focused on sustaining a predictable schedule as opposed to adding to people's complexity by telling them each week they have to discover anew where they might be able to find food that week. So we have hundreds of these consistent, reliable scheduled locations, and we want people to know if they're struggling, they can count on us. These sites are operating with safe drive-through lane methodologies. People stay in their cars. We protect the health and safety of everybody involved, from the families receiving the food to the volunteers distributing it. There are no questions asked. There are no forms to fill out. There are no barriers to access. If people find themselves in need, they are welcome to come and to access the food resources in a way that really expresses our dignity and our appreciation of their dignity and minimizes any stigma associated with accessing the food resources. One of the most recent upgrades was in our Feeding Heroes program, and those of you that have been on these calls before know that our Feeding Heroes initiative is our committed, dedicated service to military families living in San Diego County, as well as to veterans living in our county. And we partner with an impressive array of charitable organizations like USO and Us for Warriors and Courage to Call and San Diego Military Outreach Ministries, Jewish Family Service. Many of these nonprofit entities are serving active duty military families either on base or with distributions at military housing areas. We also operate our own direct distributions to military families with mobile pantry distributions just outside the fence line at Camp Pendleton, with school pantries at schools that are 70–80% military families. So we're also doing direct distribution in addition to supporting these community partners. Last Saturday was Armed Forces Day, and sadly that day has kind of lost a lot of visibility to the community. Memorial Day obviously is a very solemn occasion where we remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of the country. Veterans Day is where we honor those who have previously served, and lost in the confluence of those two important holidays is Armed Forces Day, which is when we actually pay tribute to those that are serving in the uniform right now. And our commitment to Armed Forces Day was expressed by significantly increasing the amount of food by 50% that was available to families through a distribution at Grossmont College done by Courage to Call, which is one of our vital Feeding Heroes partners and helps us to get food out to military families. So I just wanted to highlight that because people sometimes don't understand why military families are struggling more during COVID-19. And the answer is that oftentimes it is the job that is held by the military spouse that causes that military family to be able to have a complete budget each month. Well, sadly, many of the military spouses in our community have been victims of layoffs. It's hard for military spouses to find work because they tend to move every 2 years. They cannot progress to higher wage jobs in an organization because of that mobility. And so they are often, from a seniority standpoint or from the type of job sectors that are readily available to them, in some of the most vulnerable positions. And we have spoken with many military spouses who now find themselves unemployed. Often their military spouse is on deployment, could be on a ship for 6 months, could be in a combat zone. And that spouse who was providing the essential add-on to the family income is now having to struggle with essentially single parenting, combined with having to conduct a job search, combined with other stresses and pressures related to COVID-19 health and safety. So this is a tough time for those military families. And I really want to express special appreciation to those donors who have targeted their gifts to our Feeding Heroes initiative and enabled us to do this vitally important work. So next I want to mention just real quickly that we still are sustaining these 5 large regional emergency distribution sites. These are indistinguishable in some respects from hundreds of other distribution points across the county, except that we are providing a much higher level of support to the agencies that are operating these 5 regional distribution sites. You heard from Rosie Vasquez earlier at Community Through Hope in Chula Vista in the south. We are also at the Jacob Center for Innovation in southeastern San Diego. The Brother Benno Foundation is handling the North Coastal region. East County and North Inland is being handled by the First Congregational Church of Ramona. And then we still have a Saturday morning distribution every Saturday morning at SDCCU Stadium in Mission Valley, formerly known as Qualcomm Stadium. The number of meals that we've distributed since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis has risen now to 4.5 million meals in 8 weeks. So that's from March 14th to May 15th, 4.5 million meals. Last month, we doubled the amount of meals we provided to the community through our direct sites and our agency partner distributions. This does not include, by the way, our youth meal sites, our direct youth meal distribution sites. We have a number of those sites operating around San Diego County where a catered meal is provided to any youth in the car. And even if they're not in the car, the parent just attests to how many youth they're going to be feeding and they provide those meals. This number also does not include CalFresh. And we work closely with the San Diego Hunger Coalition, providing CalFresh enrollment services to get people access to that critical EBT card, which gets charged up at the beginning of each month with a new balance that can be used at a grocery store in a highly dignified way for families to purchase food. So we appreciate the Hunger Coalition and their partnership on both school meals and on the CalFresh work, and they're doing fabulous, fabulous work. So with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Gavin Morris, who is our Chief Development and Marketing Officer, who's going to walk you through a couple of quick slides highlighting the community support for Feeding San Diego during this crisis. Gavin, please take it away.
Thank you, Vince. Well, as most of you know, our work is powered by the generous support of the community. And just this week, our team created a new PSA, and we've been very fortunate in a lot of the local media stations have donated airtime to run this message. And so I wanted to share the PSA with you.
1 in 6 San Diegans are now facing hunger due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Severe job losses along with school closures are creating a critical need for food assistance among countless children, families, and seniors throughout our community.
I'm Tony Hawk.
Bill Walton.
John Foreman, and we are asking all of you to go to feedingsandiego.org and give today.
Every dollar you give will impact San Diegans who need it most.
Feeding San Diego needs your support more than ever. Go to feedingsandiego.org and give today.
We're very grateful to Tony Hawk, Bill Walton, and John Foreman for coming forward and really supporting us during this difficult time. It's really important for us to get the message out
1
there.
in 6 San Diegans.
I wanted to just highlight quickly the vast amount of community support that we've received since COVID-19 hit 2 months ago. We have received support from nearly 9,200 donors, the majority of which who are individuals, and almost 5,000 of those people are new donors to the organization. Really amazing show of support. And the average gift online is at $173. I'm proud to report as of this morning that over the last 2 months, we've raised $9.8 million to support our emergency response efforts. And just for some context, we need approximately $91,000 every day from the community in order to sustain our critical services during this difficult time. So as much as we are incredibly grateful to the tremendous support that we've received, as Vince mentioned, it has really allowed us to quickly adapt our model to purchase additional product in order to get it out to the community where it's needed most. But all of that is due to the generous support of our donors. And as I mentioned, we have numerous supporters and too many to list, but in particular, I wanted to highlight Novartis US Foundation, who just came in with a leadership gift within the last couple of weeks, as well as Green Tweed and the Moxie Foundation. Incredible support of our emergency response. We are tremendously grateful. And all of these other foundations, corporations, organizations have supported us with gifts in excess of $25,000. And in addition to that, we have a large number of supporters who've given between $10,000 and $25,000. Most recently, I wanted to highlight Union Bank, who has stepped up with a major gift, as well as the Seaside chapter of the National Charity League, who made a very generous gift this week as well. So we are incredibly grateful to those companies and organizations for coming forward during this difficult time. One of the ways that if you've joined these calls in the past, I've spoken about our benefit campaigns and fund drives. And there's 2 different ways that people can do this. There's a lot of individuals in the community that have organized their own fundraiser. So you can go to our website and it will walk you through the process under benefit campaigns, how to set up your own fundraiser. And then we also have numerous companies that have set up different campaigns that benefit Feeding San Diego in some way. So for example, this month is Metallica's month of giving, and they are selling a number of products on their website, and Feeding San Diego and the Feeding America network of food banks benefit from each of those sales. So if you're interested in learning more about these campaigns, I would encourage you to visit our website with all the details on how easy it is to support us through some of these ways. Wanted to also highlight, typically we would be launching our Fuel for Summer campaign, which is really to raise awareness of the increased need during the summer months when schools are out. But with COVID-19, there already is a tremendous need. As Vince has shared, we are seeing approximately 50% increase across the board in the rate of hunger. It's even higher among children. 1 in 5 children across the country are now facing hunger. And according to some recent research, 41% of mothers with children under the age of 12 are now experiencing food insecurity during COVID-19. Really astounding numbers. The need exists. And this campaign, which will be launching on the 1st of June, is really designed to help engage the community in this work and to help us get that message out there and continue to fund all of our countywide distributions to help meet the needs of children and their families. If any companies or organizations are looking for sponsorship opportunities, feel free to contact Shrina Lehman. She's an amazing member of my team, and she'd be happy to provide more information on how you might be able to support this effort. Finally, we've received numerous inquiries from individuals in the community that are looking to donate their time. And on an annual basis, we typically rely on over 14,000 volunteers. And in order to adhere to social distancing practices, we, when COVID-19 hit, we canceled the large majority of our volunteerships. However, we are currently looking for specialized volunteers to help us. They do need to hold a food handler's card and be 18 years or older. These opportunities are listed on our website at feedingsandiego.org. If you're interested in learning more about these, I would encourage you to go there. And in addition to those, those opportunities also, by the way, are in our distribution center. If you're interested in supporting things out in the community, we would encourage you to contact other community organizations, such as Hands On San Diego, who has a list of ongoing opportunities that you might be able to help with. Finally, just another reminder, we continue to need food donations, both on an individual basis and larger corporate donations. On this particular slide, I've included an email address and phone number if you're interested in making those contributions. Again, the information is also accessible on our website. The email is fooddonation@feedingsandiego.org, and that's an easy way to get that food to people who need it most. And finally, I just want to underscore the importance of helping us spread the word, whether it's finding a location of where food is available in a nearby community, or raising awareness of Feeding San Diego and what we're doing in the community. Every little bit counts during this difficult time. There are numerous ways to help do that, and one of the ways is we have a social media toolkit on our website as well, which provides some graphics and messaging that you can post to your own channels if you are willing to help us in that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gavin. Really appreciate that update. And somebody sent me a message and pointed out to me that while I was talking about our Feeding Heroes initiative to serve military families and veterans, that I should have also mentioned that Friday, May 8th, was Military Spouse Appreciation Day. And I really appreciate that because we recently had the Admiral who was in charge of Navy Region Southwest tour Feeding San Diego. And because we have so many military spouses working here at Feeding San Diego, he wanted the opportunity to meet with them in a small group. And he really emphasized the extent to which the spouse is serving too. They may not do the same job, they may not wear the uniform, but the sacrifice and the level of sacrifice that military spouses make is something that cannot be ignored in discussing the welfare of our military families. And so Military Spouse Appreciation Day is just a fantastic concept, because we really not only need to focus on the service members, but we need to focus on those who are holding up the home front and making sure that kids are taken care of, families are nourished, and it is a tough job. So thank you to all the military spouses out there. And thank you also to Tim O'Connor for joining us on today's call. I mentioned the CalFresh program earlier, which nationally is known as SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And I mentioned the EBT cards that enrollees in the CalFresh program use to access nutrition. It used to be called the Food Stamp Program because it was literally a book of food stamps. And Tim, as a very high-level official in the U.S. Department of Agriculture Food and Nutrition Service, was the person who actually led the initiative to convert the food stamp program into an EBT program, which has been phenomenally successful, has saved the government untold millions of dollars of printing and distributing stamp booklets, has created much more high dignity experience for program participants who can avoid the stigma of having to present stamps at a checkout stand, increased the efficiency of the program, and guided it toward better nutritional goals. So very honored, Tim, to have you with us on today's call, and thank you for your incredible service. I know you're retired now, but I also know that that's not really a word that works well for you. So we appreciate your support of Feeding San Diego. On the screen, you'll see the coronavirus page, which you saw earlier. I just want to highlight again that if individuals on today's call are wondering how they can get involved, what they can do to help, all of the major ways are reflected here on this page. And we also had a question, and actually we can segue now to the question and answer period. But we had a question earlier about the opportunity to volunteer. And we do have a volunteer resource page linked from our homepage at feedingsandiego.org. At this time, we have adopted special volunteer procedures in our distribution center in Sereno Mesa. We are limiting volunteers to those 18 and up who have a food handler card. So if the County of San Diego has not issued a food handler card, somebody would need to go and get that training, achieve that card in order to volunteer here. We're doing that because we're having to implement an extraordinary number of safety procedures above and beyond our normal stringent food safety procedures to accommodate the need for personal safety. And we had to really restrict the number of volunteers here. Normally we have 14,000 volunteers per year. We would do 15 volunteer shifts a week. But now we're relying on a much smaller pool of highly trained volunteers that are giving us many more hours than they normally would, because they're taking the place of all these large community-based volunteer groups. We anticipate we will, of course, we will go back to our normal methodology of hosting volunteer shifts when public health officials tell us that it's safe to do so. In the meantime, if you visit our Food Finder map, you can click in on individual locations and you can contact any of the distribution sites that are near you to see if they need volunteer resources. And some of them will say yes, some of them will welcome those additional volunteer resources. Earlier, Rosie Vasquez in Chula Vista runs Community Through Hope mentioned that her organization is volunteer driven. And having been there, having been at the distribution and knowing the organization as I do, I can tell you that is absolutely true. So don't feel that because Feeding San Diego's distribution center is limiting its access, that there aren't ample opportunities to be involved in solving hunger all across San Diego County. And we really appreciate your interest in doing that. So we did have some other questions in the question and answer queue. Tim O'Connor said, thank you for all you're doing. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I would ask if anyone on the call has any other questions right now. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you're going to see Q&A, and you can tap on that Q&A to type your question. And this would be the moment to do that. If you have any particular question, please ask that now using the Q&A window. And if no one has any additional questions, well, actually, let me just take a moment to highlight one or two of the questions that were asked. One question was, how much money has been spent on food? The answer is we have spent $5.5 million in the last 8 weeks on food purchases. Then, of course, we have a substantial cost associated with bringing donated produce into San Diego County. So the actual amount expended toward food generally is even higher. There was a question about, has the purchase of truckloads of food leveled off, stayed the same, is it beginning to reduce? That is, we are continuing to purchase food at a very, very aggressive pace, well above our normal levels. I think I mentioned we have been purchasing about 80 truckloads a month. Normally we would be doing 2 truckloads a month. And as long as the community support is there, and as long as the need is there, we're going to continue to bridge support with solving the need through whatever mechanisms we have available to us. Purchased food is an option of last resort because it's the most expensive way to solve hunger. But if that's what we need to do to meet the need, and if the community support is there to support those purchases, then that's what we're going to do. So I think we answered all the substantive questions. There were a few very specific questions that we asked people to follow up with us via email. If you have, oh, there's a couple more. If you have questions, by the way, that we don't get to today, please send an email to info@feedingsandiego.org. That's info@feedingsandiego.org, and we will respond promptly to your question. There was a question about updated data regarding hunger. You know, our Map the Meal Gap data from last year showed 1 out of every 8 people in San Diego County struggling with hunger, and the rate being higher for children, about 1 out of 6, and that is accurate. Currently, the Map the Meal Gap data is being crunched and readied for release. We don't think that's going to happen at the last until June. I mentioned that at the last biweekly stakeholder call that we anticipated having that data in June. So we'll see where that data lies when it comes out. There is obviously a great amount of difficulty in accurately mapping the level of food insecurity. We now predict that hunger in San Diego County has increased by 50%. And that's an estimate based on a lot of different data sources, but with so many people, 430,000 people being unemployed, we know that there has been a staggering increase in the rate of hunger across the county. Another question was, who do you contact if you do not see your food distribution sites on your website? That is a really great thing for us to fix. We can fix that very, very readily. So thank you for pointing that out. South Bay Community Services, terrific partner. We appreciate the work you do, and we would love to have you contact us and just ask for our programs department. You have a liaison specifically assigned to you within our team, but if that name and contact information is not readily available, just call our number, which is on our website, 858-452-3663, and ask for the programs department, and the programs department can help you with that. But we definitely appreciate your following up on that, because we want to make sure that we have accurate information on our map about your distribution sites. There was another comment that says, I'm volunteering with FFCC in North County. My understanding, this is an arm of Feeding San Diego. Is that a correct assumption? Thank you. And I am not actually sure what FFCC stands for. So if the person asking that question could clarify by spelling that out for us, or if anybody on the Feeding San Diego team who's listening has that information, let me know. I will say that Feeding San Diego does not have subsidiary organizations. The faith-based and charitable organizations that we partner with across San Diego County are independent organizations that partner with us on a contractual basis. They are separate organizational entities that have agreed to follow our food safety guidelines, our non-discrimination guidelines, and are working with us you know, to solve the problem of hunger. And oftentimes they're performing food rescue in the community. So we will try to get that question answered for you as to whether or not FFCC is a Feeding San Diego partner agency. Is there a list of organizations who glean food from residences? Great question. There are nonprofit organizations like Produce Good, which are willing to send volunteers onto private property to harvest fruit from trees. And oftentimes that fruit is donated to Feeding San Diego so that we can get it out to our partner charitable agencies. So I would start with Produce Good. They're easy to find on Google. Just type in Produce Good San Diego, and you will find contact information. And if for any reason you're not able to find contact information for Produce Good, just send an email to info@feedingsandiego.org and ask for it, and we will connect you. They're a wonderful, wonderful nonprofit organization doing great work. And the question about friends and family community connection, if the person asking that question would be so kind to provide an email address, you don't have to do it through the Q&A window. You can do it privately. Well, you can do it through the chat window, but indicate that you want to do that privately. And we will find out what the nature of the relationship is, if any, and get back to you. We also welcome an email at info@feedingsandiego.org if you want to do it that way. But we want to get you accurate information, and we have different forms of partnership with different organizations across the county. So we want to make sure we get you a completely accurate answer, and I'm not prepared to do that live at this moment. Well, that concludes all the questions in the queue. We're a little bit over time. We thank you so much, all of you who are joining us here today, and we appreciate your interest in working with us to solve this problem of hunger. We appreciate your helping to spread the message of our work across the community, to inspire more people to know where they can get resources, to inspire people with giving capacity to help Feeding San Diego achieve its mission. And most of all, this is a very difficult time for our community. We all have to pull together, work together, strive together to solve the problem of hunger for the unbelievably and unprecedented number of families across the community that are now struggling with this problem. So thank you all, and we hope to see you again for another update in 2 weeks. Take care.